Okay, so I want to make this video today to explain the results of two pieces of research we've done looking into the top influencers in payments and also fintechs. Now, the payments report was focused on EMEA and the fintech report was focused on UK fintech leaders. There were a couple of really interesting insights which we found from this report, and in this video I'm going to take you through what those were. So the first thing we found when looking at these influencers was a very strong correlation between job seniority and content performance. So this may look obvious to you on LinkedIn, but in general, the more senior you are, the more engagement your content tends to get. This is quite a strong correlation, to be completely honest with you. We looked at tens of thousands of posts, and in general, the higher the individual was in the hierarchy of the company, the better the content performed. And we saw this quite obviously because there were posts published by individuals which weren't spectacular, but got hundreds, if not thousands of likes just because of their seniority. So what does this mean for you if you're looking at how you really leverage LinkedIn when it comes to your internal and external communications? Well, put simply, you need to engage your senior leaders because you are missing out on huge reach potential by simply doing the basics with your leaders. So you don't need to be that dramatic or that courageous with your content with your senior leaders. You can simply get them to post and they'll actually get tons of engagement just by virtue of them being really senior in their job role. So that was the first thing we found. There's a really strong correlation between job seniority and content performance. The second thing we looked into when we were looking at this report was, out of the top performing content, what other elements, what things have we noticed which are consistent in generating strong engagement? One of the things we found was actually the best performing content pieces made use of other people in the content. And what we've also been looking into with these reports is why recently there has been a reduction in general net outreach in terms of impressions per post on the platform. And you may have noticed this in your own content, that generally speaking, the average impressions everyone is getting is a lot lower. And one of the reasons I think that is because I think LinkedIn is actually encouraging us to really bring other people into post. And we found this with our research. So we did the hard yards, looking into some of the most viral content posts in financial services, and actually we found that a lot of these posts included other people, and this comprised of several different ways to bring in other people. Obviously, the first thing was tagging other people into the posts. What you do when you tag other people in the post is you actually massively increase the chances of that post going beyond your first degree network. And this is what we call the first degree network wall, because a lot of times when you post, if you don't bring in those other people through tagging, you actually limit your post to just really fly around your first degree network. So bringing in your external partners and guests to your post is really important. The second thing was, when you did the content which performed the best tended to be content which was collaborative. So interviews, pictures with other guests, pictures at events and so forth. When you brought other people into the post, the viral elements tended to increase. So when you combine seniority with the knowledge that these senior job titles need to really be focusing on bringing external guests into their post, that is the foundations of incredibly good content performance. Now, beyond that, we did notice that there were a strong correlation between video content and the post performance, as well as photographic content as well. So generally speaking, we found that video content and photographic content perform the best, and content which involved human faces, ideally the faces of the thought leader themselves, done really, really well. So when you're thinking about your content strategy, ensuring that you really bring, and this stuff, does sound obvious, but it's backed by data. bring your people into the conversation, bring your guests and bring the human elements into your posts. It's super important. That was the third element we found during the research. And the fourth component we found was there was a correlation between post frequency and general success. And I know this sounds kind of obvious again, but we found that the thought leaders that posted once every 2 weeks ideally performed better than those that posted once every 6 weeks or 8 weeks, purely by virtue of them having more content to gauge those reactions. And by extension, we noticed that the highest performing average post, which was calculated by the net volume of posts divided by the engagement, tended to come from people who focus with their post in the morning rather than the afternoon. And that was really prevalent across all geographic time zones. Mornings seemed to be a real hotspot for engagement. And we think that maybe because there is less fatigue in the morning, so people are more likely and more inclined to like posts when they're generated in the morning because they kind of have a full bar of motivation, rather than the afternoon when they're about to sign off on work and they want nothing more to do with their working day. So trying to centralize your posts into the morning is a really good idea. That way you can really make use of the potential of your LinkedIn content. So there were some of the things we found from our reports. Now, there's lots more insights which stand out from this. We did look into the prevalence of companies at a broader level. What brands did the best? And both the Fintech report and the Payments reports, there were a couple of brands which really did do amazing from this. And what we found was the consistent link between all of these brands was that they all really did have quite a strong employee advocacy program. And by extension of that, this program did not make use of excessively resharing generic content from the employee advocacy platforms. We found this actually was a massive detrimental impact on brands. So the content which was shared was authentically the thought leaders' content. It wasn't just resharing generic content from the platform. So the best advocacy platforms and the best advocacy brands, and by extension the best brands on LinkedIn, encourage their cohorts to produce content which was authentically theirs, rather than resharing without commentary generic content assets uploaded into the platform. So again, this is where I think you can really leverage your employee advocates in the future. Try not to encourage them to just reshare generic assets on the platform, but instead try to get them to have their own tone of voice on their content. Have the asset, but encourage them to share what they think of that particular news story. Even better, encourage them to take pictures at events or share commentary at events or insights. Or even better, get them to record video and have a program in place to industrialize your content production. And that's going to be the subject of another video, which is how you really start to industrialize your content production and create a conveyor belt for content. And it's super important because what we found is that creating video content is super important, but there is a way you can do it very, very easily and do it at scale. And that's going to be a subject of my second video. So to summarize the executive overview of both reports, it's really important to understand that job seniority is critical in getting good engagement on your LinkedIn profile as a business. So encourage your leaders to be present and posting on LinkedIn. And content does not need to be revolutionary, but just have them posting regularly on LinkedIn. The second part is to ensure that your content is being shared authentically by advocates rather than using mindless reshares. The third, post once every 2 weeks, ideally, and ensure you have consistency with your leaders posting, and to ensure those posts are visual. And the final element was to bring other people into the conversation. So when you post, ensure it's collaborative. Make sure you are creating a dialogue over a monologue of your content, and that way you'll double, if not triple, the chances of your content climbing the wall of your first degree networks and going semi-viral.